Thank you for spending a little time here with this story. Before we begin, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing this video with someone who enjoys thoughtful science fiction. Today's story is about a human envoy who saves millions of lives, but breaks something sacred in the process. And when the Galactic Council tries to make his apology worthless, one wounded world must decide who has the right to name its pain. Now, let's begin. The Council declared human apologies legally worthless. Jonah Mercer first understood the size of the disaster from silence. Auren Prime was not silent by nature. The border world usually carried a low underground hum from its deep cities, transit wells, pressure gardens, and old stone ventilation towers. Even the wind had a voice there, moving through the red mineral ridges and making them ring like glass. But when Jonah stepped out of the Earth Relief Shuttle, the capital basin below him sounded as if someone had placed a hand over the mouth of the planet. He stood on a landing shelf above the city of Vale Tehran, wearing a gray Earth crisis coat already dusted with copper sand. Around him, rescue crews moved with controlled urgency. Human engineers lowered cutting frames into broken streets. Auren medics carried pale blue stretchers toward heat tents. Earth translators repeated evacuation instructions in calm voices, one line at a time. Jonah had not come to Auren Prime as a judge, a hero, or soldier. He was Earth's emergency envoy, sent when a disaster involved more than machines and medicine. His job was to make decisions fast enough to save lives, but careful enough not to turn rescue into occupation. That balance was already failing. Commander Eric Sloan came toward him from the edge of a collapsed transit mouth. Sloan was broad, tired, and covered in stone dust from the shoulders down. He carried a field tablet in one hand. His other hand kept pressing against his ear receiver, as if he could force the bad news to sound better by holding it in place. "The Western Air Column is gone," Sloan said. "The lower districts have maybe 90 minutes before the pressure drops past recovery levels. The Council Relief Fleet is still 3 hours out. Local crews are trapped with the civilians. We have one route left." Jonah looked past him. Below the landing shelf, the city did not look like a city anymore. It looked like a body with its ribs broken open. The deep avenues had split. Lift towers leaned into smoke. Thousands of Auren civilians moved in slow lines through red dust. Their silver head veils turned brown by ash. "Show me," Jonah said. Sloan brought up the map. A clean blue line marked the only possible rescue corridor. It ran through the old quarter, under the ridge, and into the sealed lower districts. Jonah followed the line with his eyes. Then he saw the structure sitting over it. The Vault of Names. He had been briefed on it before arrival. Every relief team had. The vault was not just a monument. It was the oldest surviving Auren archive, built into living stone before the species joined the wider galaxy. It held carved name bands for ancestors lost during their first age of exile, migration, famine, and war. The Auren did not store memory only in data. They carved it, sang it, touched it, and taught children to walk beside it before they were old enough to read. Kellen Vore, the senior keeper of the vault, stood a few steps away, listening through the translator band at his throat. He was old even by Auren standards. His skin had the pale violet cast of his people, and his 4 slender hands trembled against the black cloth wrapped around his wrists. "No," Kellen said when he saw the route. His voice came through the translator thin but steady. "Not there. Not through the vault." Sloan did not look at him. He kept looking at Jonah. "There is no second tunnel wide enough for the evac carriers," Sloan said. "We tried the East Service spine. It collapsed on the drones. We can cut through the vault's lower wall and reach the trapped districts. Or we can leave them there." Jonah felt the weight of every person waiting for him to speak. He had faced failed habitats, border quarantines, and armed standoffs over relief corridors. He knew the shape of an impossible choice. It never arrived like thunder. It arrived in a quiet map, a shrinking clock, and a room full of people hoping someone else would carry the decision. He turned to Kellen. "How much of the vault will be damaged?" Jonah asked. Kellen's gaze hardened. "You ask that as if memory can be weighed by the meter. I'm asking because people are dying under it. And the dead are there, because they kept us alive long enough to become a people, Kellen said. Every name in that wall was carried across centuries. If you break it, you do not break stone. You break the last place where some of them still exist. Jonah did not answer at once. He heard a child coughing nearby. He heard an Auren medic whispering to a woman who could not stand. He heard Sloan breathing hard through his nose, waiting. The first rule of Crisis Command was simple. Do not confuse delay with respect. Delay could be cruelty dressed in manners. The second rule was harder. Do not confuse necessity with innocence. How many below? Jonah asked. Confirmed living signals, 3.2 million, Sloan said. Unconfirmed, maybe more. Kellen closed his eyes. Jonah looked at the map again. The blue line did not care what it crossed. Machines never did. Cut only the lower west wall, Jonas said. Preserve every section you can scan before the breach. Bring Auren keepers to mark priority zones. No Earth media inside. No victory footage. No flags. No speeches. Move the people first. Sloan nodded once. I need authorization. Jonah placed his thumb against the field tablet. The device chimed. Kellen stared at him as if Jonah had raised a weapon. I am sorry, Jonah said quietly. Kellen's face did not soften. Not yet. Not while you still think sorry belongs before the breaking. The cut began 7 minutes later. It did not look heroic. It looked ugly, practical, and loud. Earth cutters burned a horizontal line into the lower wall, while Auren keepers stood beyond the safety cordon and called out sections to avoid. Their voices shook through the translation system. They named the sections one after another. Name Band 300. Name Band 9. Southern Exile Record. River Oath Section. Infantrol. Second Return Lineage. The first stone panel cracked. Auren civilians cried out, not in panic, but in recognition. Jonah realized then that the sound of the vault breaking had meaning to them. It was not noise. It was the sound of someone they loved being struck. He made himself stay. When the wall opened, hot stale air burst from the lower district. The first trapped families came out 15 minutes later. Then more. Then thousands. Then the evacuation became a river of bodies, blankets, lamps, and carried children. Earth crews guided them to triage tents. Auren medics worked beside human doctors. Nobody cheered. Nobody had the strength. By the time the Council relief fleet arrived, the worst of the lower districts had been cleared. By the time the first Council reporters came down, the vault of names was broken. The headlines reached orbit before the final survivors did. Earth relief saves millions on Auren Prime. Human crisis envoy orders impossible rescue. Earth acts before Galaxy Council approval. Jonah watched those headlines move across a relief tent screen while Auren families sat on the ground 10 meters away, wrapped in heat cloth and dust. He could see why Earth's public networks were proud. The rescue had been fast. The losses could have been far worse. Earth had arrived first, acted first, and saved more people than anyone had expected. Then he saw Mara Venn kneeling before a tray of broken name stones. Mara was not a government minister. She was a civil representative for the Western districts, chosen by survivor committees because she had spent her life organizing water rights, housing records, and ancestry claims. Her younger brother had died in the first collapse before Earth arrived. Her family names had been stored in the vault's lower west wall. She held a stone strip in both hands. The carving had been burned through the middle. Half a name remained. The other half was dust. Jonah walked to her because sending an aid would have been cowardice. Mara looked up before he spoke. Her eyes were dark gold, the Auren color most humans first mistook for beauty until they saw grief behind it. How many did you save? She asked. Millions, Jonah said. Then many will call you merciful. That is not why I came. No, you came because we were close enough for Earth to arrive first. You came because your machines were faster than Council permission. You came because you believed the living mattered more than the dead. Jonah let the accusation stand. In that hour, yes. Mara's mouth tightened. At least you do not decorate it. Behind them, rescue crews carried another survivor into the tent. A child's voice called for a parent. The answer came from somewhere beyond the lamps, weak but alive. Mara looked down at the broken stone again. My grandmother brought me here when I was 5, she said. She made me touch every band that carried our family names. She said the old ones had walked through hunger so we could stand in sunlight. She said if their names remained, we were not alone. Jonah listened. Today, Mara said, your people saved our lungs and cut through our memory. How should I thank you for that? You should not thank me, Jonas said. She looked at him again. You do not owe Earth gratitude for a wound Earth caused while helping, he said. Both things are true. We save lives. We broke something sacred. I will not ask you to make one truth erase the other. Mara studied him as if she was waiting for the real speech to begin, the cleaner one, the diplomatic one, the one that would tell her why she had to be reasonable. It did not come. That night, Jonas sat in a temporary command office made from stacked relief crates and a folding table. The word night meant little in the basin, where rescue lights burned under dust clouds and the planet's pale sun faded behind a red horizon. He had not slept. Sloan stood across from him. Lena Park, Earth's legal advisor, appeared on a secure wall screen from the Earth diplomatic ship in orbit. The rescue numbers are strong, Lena said. Council observers are annoyed, but they cannot deny the results. If we stay on message, Earth comes out of this with political credit. Jonah looked at the draft statement on the table. It praised cooperation. It expressed sympathy. It described the destruction of part of the vault as unavoidable structural loss. He pushed it aside. That phrase will not stand, he said. Lena was quiet for a beat. Jonah, this is not the hour to improvise morality into a legal record. It is not improvising. It is naming what happened. Sloan leaned against the crate wall. We did what we had to do. Yes, Jonas said. And what we had to do still hurt them. Lena's face softened, but only a little. She was a lawyer because she believed words could either guard truth or bury it. If you call it harm, the council will call it admission, she said. If you apologize before a ruling, they will say Earth is admitting official responsibility before the council even opens a case. Then let them. They can use it to limit Earth's crisis authority. That means our right to act fast in a border emergency could be questioned next time. I know. They can say humanity is too emotionally reactive for emergency command. I know. They can make you the example. Jonah looked through the open flap of the command office. Beyond the lights, Auren keepers were gathering fragments of the vault by hand. They moved slowly, like people recovering bones. If Earth only tells the part where we were brave, Jonas said, we learned the wrong lesson from our own courage. No one answered. The next morning, Jonas stood before the damaged vault with the Earth flag removed from the podium. He had ordered it taken down himself. Auren survivors gathered in a wide half-circle. Earth rescue crews stood behind them, silent. Council recording drones hovered above the ridge, their lenses bright as insects. Jonah did not read the approved statement. My name is Jonah Mercer, he said. I speak today as Earth's emergency envoy and as the person who authorized the breach of the Vault of Names. The translators carried his words into Auren, Council Standard, and 12 major broadcast languages. Earth came here to help save lives. Human crews and Auren crews work together, and because of that, millions of people are alive who might have been lost. That truth matters. It will remain in the record. He paused. Mara stood in the crowd. Kellen stood beside her, both hands folded over a cloth pouch of stone fragments. Another truth also matters, Jonas said. To open the rescue corridor, I authorized the destruction of part of a sacred Auren archive. We did not understand its full meaning in time. We did not carry its memory as the Auren carry it. Our reason was to save the living, but our reason does not erase the harm. The crowd did not move. Earth apologizes to the Auren people, Jonas said. I apologize to you. We will not ask you to be grateful for the part that hurt you. We will not ask you to forgive us before you are ready, or ever. We will record what was saved and what was broken. We will help restore what can be restored, and we will not pretend that money can replace what cannot return. Mara stared at him. Jonah could not read her face. This apology is not a request to close the matter, he said. It is the beginning of our responsibility. The silence after that was longer than any applause could have been. Then the council drones rose higher, turned toward orbit, and sent his words to the galaxy. The council response came in less than 2 hours. It did not begin with sympathy for the dead or gratitude for the rescue. It came as a legal notice, stamped with the seal of the Galaxy Council and signed by High Adjudicator Auren Prime. The notice declared that humanity's public apology carried no diplomatic standing. In plain terms, the Council was saying Jonah's apology had no official value in its records. It described his statement as emotionally irregular, procedurally premature, and legally worthless. Then came the sentence that changed a rescue into a crisis. Earth's conduct on Auren Prime would be reviewed for possible instability in emergency authority. Now, the story was no longer only about a rescue. The Council was trying to turn Jonah's apology into proof that humanity could not be trusted with fast decisions in a crisis. Lena read the notice aloud on the shuttle back to orbit. Her voice stayed even, but Jonah could hear the anger beneath it. Sloan swore under his breath. "We saved their people before the Council even got out of transit." "The Council knows that," Lena said. "That is not what scares them." Jonah looked out the small window. Auren Prime turned below them, red and wounded, its storm bands glowing in the sun. "Then what does?" Sloan asked. Lena looked at Jonah. "A strong civilization apologizing before it is forced to." The hearing was set for 6 days later at the central chamber of the Galaxy Council. Jonah spent the first 3 days between Auren Prime and orbit, refusing to leave the recovery zone until the last unstable district had been cleared. Council channels filled with commentary. Some called Earth noble, more called humanity impulsive. Several powerful blocs began using the same phrase, as if it had been distributed in a private memo. Human apologies are legally worthless. On the 4th day, Auren Prime sent Earth a private correction proposal. Lena brought it to Jonah in a narrow briefing room aboard the diplomatic ship. The proposal was only 3 paragraphs long. Earth would replace its apology with a statement of regret for unavoidable damage during lawful emergency intervention. Jonah would confirm that no admission of moral fault had been intended. In return, the Council would close the instability review, and Earth's emergency authority would remain intact. Lena did not sit down. "This is the off-ramp." Jonah read it twice. "It is a burial. It is also a shield. For Earth, not for the truth." She crossed her arms. "I'm not telling you to sign it. I'm telling you what they are offering. If we refuse, they will argue that you placed emotion above diplomatic order. They may suspend our access to frontier crisis operations. Meaning next time Earth is the closest relief force, we may need Council permission before moving." "Yes. And people could die while permission travels." "Yes." Jonah set the proposal down. That was the cruelty of Auren Prime's trap. It did not merely threaten Jonah's career or Earth's pride. It placed future victims on the table. If Jonah held the apology, he risked limiting Earth's ability to save people later. If he withdrew it, the truth about the vault would be buried under cleaner language. "What would you do?" he asked. Lena's face tightened. "I would hate every option. Then I would ask what Earth becomes after choosing." Before Jonah could answer, the wall screen shifted. A public broadcast from Auren Prime had broken through every major network. Mara Vin stood outside the damaged vault, surrounded by survivor representatives. Her voice was steady. "Earth's apology does not restore what was taken from us," she said. "The vault of names remains broken. Our dead remain disturbed. We do not forgive Earth because Earth used a softer word for its decision." The clip spread instantly. Council commentators seized on it. The harmed party rejects humanity's apology. Earth's gesture fails even among the wounded. Human sentiment cannot replace law. Soren's office sent another notice before the hour ended. Mara's statement would be entered into the hearing record as evidence that Earth's apology had no restorative effect. Lena closed her eyes. "They're going to use her against us." "No," Jonas said. "They're going to use her grief against us. There's a difference." He recorded a short response and sent it to the Auren networks before anyone could advise him to soften it. "Mara Vin is right," he said. "An apology does not restore the vault. The Auren people owe Earth no forgiveness. Their anger belongs in the record, and Earth will not ask the Council to remove it. The response confused the commentators. It also reached Mara. Jonah did not know that until the next day, when she requested a meeting at the temporary restoration hall beside the vault. He went without cameras. The restoration hall had once been a transit depot. Now tables filled the room from wall to wall, each covered with fragments of carved stone. Auren keepers moved among them with scanners and soft brushes. Some pieces were as large as a hand. Others were grains sorted into shallow silver dishes. Kellenvor stood at the far table, guiding younger keepers through matching patterns. Mara waited near him. "You answered me without correcting me," she said when Jonah arrived. "You did not need correction. Most envoys would have said my pain was understandable but incomplete." "Pain is usually incomplete," Jonah said. "That does not make it false." Kellen looked up at that. For the first time, Jonah saw something other than anger in the old keeper's eyes. Not warmth, not trust, perhaps attention. Mara walked along a table of broken name bands. "The council has offered to classify this as emergency structural loss," she said. "They say that will make compensation faster." They offered Earth the same language. "And will you take it?" "No." "Why?" Jonah could have said because it was right. But people who had been harmed had heard too many clean answers from people who wanted to leave quickly. "Because I signed the order," he said. "Because if I call your debt a structural loss, I am not protecting Earth. I am teaching Earth how to lie better next time." Mara looked away. "Do not expect that answer to save you at the council." "I do not. Do not expect it to save you with us." "I do not expect that either." She touched a broken strip with one finger. "Then perhaps you understand more than I thought." That fragile moment did not last. Before the freeze came, Jonah spent one more hour among the survivor tents. It was not an official visit. He walked with no camera, no aid except a translator officer, and no promise that anyone had to speak with him. Some Auren turned away when they recognized him. A few stared until he passed. One older woman held up a cup of water that an Earth medic had brought her, then pointed at the broken ridge where the vault stood. The gesture was simple enough that no translator was needed. You gave with one hand and took with the other. Jonah stopped and bowed his head. He did not try to explain the map or the clock. The woman had probably already heard both. Explanations could become another kind of pressure when offered too quickly. Near the children's shelter, a young Auren father blocked Sloane's path and demanded to know whether the human crews would leave before the air columns were stable. Sloane answered with the blunt honesty of a rescue commander. "No," he said, "not until your engineers tell us we can leave without making things worse." The father looked ready to hate the answer, then found no clean place to put his anger. He stepped aside. That was the shape of the whole planet now. No one could divide the story into comfort. Earth was needed. Earth was resented. Earth had saved families who might spend the rest of their lives passing the broken vault on the way to work. Jonah saw Mara watching him from the edge of the shelter lane. She did not approach. He did not force the meeting. The most respectful thing he could offer in that moment was distance. 2 days before the hearing, Counselor Verisol froze Earth's restoration fund. The order came through financial channels, not public ones. That made it crueler. It did not roar. It simply stopped pumps, shipments, temporary shelter contracts, archive stabilization equipment, medical supply routes, and the first payments to Auren families who had lost homes in the lower districts. The official reason was improper influence. Earth, the order claimed, had combined an apology and material aid in a way that could pressure the harmed party into emotional acceptance. Until reviewed, no Earth-controlled fund could be distributed on Auren Prime. Soren Thal defended the freeze in a chamber interview. "The council must ensure that restoration is not transformed into gratitude purchasing," he said. "The Auren people deserve protection from emotional leverage." The line was clever. It sounded like defense of the wounded. It also left wounded people waiting for water filters. At the restoration hall, Mara confronted Jonah in front of Auren committee leaders. "Is this your help?" she asked. A promise that freezes the moment it becomes politically inconvenient. "No," Jonah said. "The council froze Earth-controlled distribution, so Earth will stop controlling it." Lena, who had come down with him, turned sharply. "Jonah," he continued, Earth will transfer the fund into an independent Auren recovery trust, Jonah said. Mara Vin and Kellen Vor will nominate the civilian board. Earth will hold no voting seat. We will not name buildings, film families receiving aid, or use any restoration project as proof of forgiveness. Mara stared at him. You would give us control of Earth money? It is not Earth money once it is owed for harm. Lena spoke carefully. The council may argue that this evades the freeze. It does not evade it, Jonas said. It answers the accusation. If they fear Earth buying gratitude, Earth removes its power to purchase anything. We pay. The Auren decide. Kellen's old hands tightened around his brush. And if we build no monument to Earth, then no monument is built. If our record says Jonah Mercer broke the vault, then it will be accurate. Mara's expression changed. It was not forgiveness. It was something more guarded and more useful. It was the first movement of doubt against her certainty that Earth and the Council were simply two faces of the same arrogance. The transfer took 18 hours and enraged the Council. It also changed the public weather. Tomas Reed, the independent reporter who had been following the relief effort since the first landing, released a report called The Money Earth Refused to Control. He kept his voice calm, but the images did the work. Auren families received shelter supplies from an Auren board. Earth crews unloaded equipment without banners. Kellen Vor signed the first archive preservation order. Mara Vin refused to smile for cameras, and no human official asked her to. Then Tomas released something stronger. He showed the edit trail from the Council's preliminary incident record. The first version, filed by Auren keepers, described the vault breach as destruction of ancestral memory. The edited Council version replaced that phrase with structural collateral loss. The Council tried to answer the report with procedure. A spokesperson said the phrase had been adjusted for neutral review. Another said local terminology could inflame public feeling. A third said the Council respected culture while also preserving administrative clarity. None of them said the word harm. That omission became the story. On Auren Prime, families began writing lost names on cloth strips and tying them to the temporary fence around the vault. At first there were dozens. By the second day, there were thousands. Some held names recovered from memory. Some held only family marks. Some were blank because no one knew how to spell what had been lost. Earth crews walked past them in silence on their way to the work site. Tomas filmed the fence from far away, careful not to turn grief into spectacle. His narration was plain. This is what the Council file called structural collateral loss, he said. The people here appear to have another definition. The clip moved faster than any legal brief. It reached Earth, where rescue families watched with mixed pride and shame. It reached Council member worlds, where officials warned citizens not to compare unrelated cases. It reached old protectorates, where people began searching their own archives for the words that had made their losses sound smaller. Jonah did not celebrate the pressure. Public anger could purify nothing by itself. It could expose a locked door, but it could also burn the house around it. He told Lena as much. Then give it a door to push through, she said. Not a fire to feed. That became the reason for the open hearing. Not revenge. Not theater. A door. The report ran across minor networks first. Then larger ones picked it up because anger travels faster when people can understand the sentence that caused it. Destruction of ancestral memory had become structural collateral loss. On dozens of border worlds, small species and protectorates began posting old phrases from their own council records. Necessary displacement, cultural adjustment, emergency relocation, temporary guardianship, losses within acceptable administrative range. The words sounded different when read one after another by people whose homes had been renamed by courts they never controlled. Jonah watched the feeds from orbit with Lena and Sloan. Sloan shook his head. This is bigger than us now. It was always bigger, Lena said. We're just late to noticing. She had spent the night digging through council archives. Her face looked drawn in the blue light of the screen. I found the root provision, she said. 412 years old. The council calls it the separation of sentiment and liability. Translate it, Sloan said. Voluntary apologies cannot create official council standing unless attached to a council ruling, Lena said. That means an apology alone cannot open a formal repair process, trigger compensation, reopen old records, or support a harmed people's claim. Jonah understood the shape of it at once. They made apology harmless. They made it decorative, Lena said. A powerful world can say it regrets an outcome and risk nothing. A harmed people can hear it and gain nothing. Why write that rule? Lena brought up an old case. The names were unfamiliar, but the pattern was not. A founding council empire had once apologized after a forced relocation campaign. The apology was meant to calm unrest. Instead, dozens of smaller species used the admission to reopen similar records. After that, the council changed the law. Lena leaned back. They did not ban remorse because it was weak. They contained it because it worked. That sentence stayed with Jonah. The next morning, an encrypted packet arrived from an unknown council source. It contained thousands of sealed incident summaries, displacements, extraction accidents, quarantines mishandled, heritage sites buried under security zones, children moved under emergency custody laws and never returned to their home cultures. The packet also contained a suggested strategy. Release everything before the hearing. Let the galaxy burn with it. Lena stared at the packet. This could break Vera's soul's block. Who sent it? Jonah asked. Someone who wants her weakened, not someone who loves truth. Sloan folded his arms. Does that matter? Jonah looked at the file list. Each line was a world, a date, a people, a pain turned into summary. Used carelessly, it would become exactly what council elites had always done. It would turn the wounded into ammunition. Yes, Jonah said. It matters. Lena watched him carefully. If we do not use this, we may lose. If we use it like a weapon, we deserve less than winning. Then what do you want? An open hearing, Jonah said. Not just for Earth, for the Auren, for the record. If other harmed peoples choose to speak, they speak in their own names. We do not throw their histories into the chamber to save ours. Sloan gave a tired laugh. That is the slower road. It is the only one that does not turn us into them. The Galaxy Council did not want an open hearing. Public chambers were messy. They allowed grief to speak in language that law clerks could not easily trim. But by then the pressure had moved beyond Earth channels. Border worlds, civil trusts, small delegations, and Survivor. Committees demanded public access. Tomas Reed's reports had made the edited Auren record too visible to bury. Soren Thal agreed to a public hearing because refusing one would look like fear. Verisol agreed because she believed she could still control the room. The night before departure, Earth called. Not one voice, but several. The Relief Ministry wanted assurance that emergency access would not be lost. The defense liaison warned that some council blocks were already framing the apology as proof that humans hesitated under moral pressure. A senator from Earth, speaking more carefully than he felt, asked whether Jonah understood that a single word could damage years of diplomatic work. Jonah listened from his small cabin aboard the orbital ship. Through the viewport, Auren Prime filled half the dark. The word is not the damage, he said. The damage happened in the vault. The senator sighed. That may be true, but states survive by managing truth. States rot by managing it too well. The call ended without agreement. Afterward, Sloan came by with 2 sealed meal packs and set one on Jonah's desk. Neither of them opened the food. They are scared, Sloan said. They should be. You too. Jonah looked at the planet. Every hour. Sloan sat across from him. For what it is worth, Sloan said, if you had not given the order, I would have asked command to remove you. And if I had hidden what the order cost. Sloan was quiet. Jonah turned from the window. That is the part the council does not understand, he said. They think strength is never letting your hand shake. Sometimes strength is looking at what your hand did and not hiding it behind a cleaner word. Sloan nodded once. Then go make them hear it. On the morning of the hearing, Jonah stood alone for a few minutes in a glass corridor outside the central chamber. The Galaxy Council complex hung in neutral space, a ringed city of white metal and black windows built around an artificial star. Delegations moved through the corridors in clusters, wrapped in ceremonial fabrics, pressure suits, mineral shells, heat veils, and diplomatic armor. Jonah had been inside the council before. He had negotiated transport rights there, relief zones, prisoner returns, and border health corridors. The place had always felt grand, cold, and old enough to believe its own habits were natural law. This time it felt like a machine built to make responsibility sound improper. Lena joined him with 2 cups of bitter ship coffee. She handed one over. "You are about to be offered mercy," she said. "From Soren? From everyone who wants this to end quietly. They will give Earth away to keep status if you let them reduce the apology to a cultural statement. And the Auren? They will receive aid, probably, but the record stays soft. The old rule stays intact." Jonah took the coffee. It had gone lukewarm. "How bad can the vote go?" he asked. "Bad enough. Suspension from emergency authority. Review of all Earth crisis missions. Restricted access to frontier relief routes. A formal note that humanity's diplomatic culture may be incompatible with council procedure." That last one sounds elegant. It is meant to. It would label us unstable without saying primitive. Jonah looked through the glass at the chamber doors. "Tell me the truth. Did I make this worse by apologizing?" Lena did not answer quickly. That was why he trusted her. "You made it more dangerous," she said. "Not worse. Those are not the same." The chamber doors opened. The council hall was built in descending circles. At the top sat the founding blocks. Below them, full-member species. Below them, protectorates, provisional members, observer worlds, civil delegations, and press galleries. The shape of the room told every listener where power lived before anyone spoke. Earth's table sat in the middle circle, neither low nor high. Jonah walked to it with Lena at his side. Sloane sat behind them as a witness. Mara Vin and Kellen Vor sat in the Auren delegation section, far enough away that Jonah could not read their expressions. High Adjudicator Soren Thal called the hearing to order. He was tall, narrow, and silver-skinned, with a voice designed by practice to sound reasonable while closing doors. His species had served the council judiciary for generations. He wore no jewels, no military marks, no sign of vanity. That made him more dangerous. He looked like procedure wearing a body. This hearing concerns the conduct of Earth envoy Jonah Mercer during and after the emergency intervention on Auren Prime, Soren said. The council acknowledges that Earth forces contributed materially to the evacuation of civilians. This hearing does not dispute operational success. It examines whether humanity's subsequent emotional admission compromised diplomatic stability. Lena leaned close. There it is. He separated rescue from apology. Soren played Jonah's public statement. Not all of it. Only the sentences in which Jonah said Earth caused harm, Earth apologized, and Earth would not ask forgiveness. Then Soren paused the recording. The envoy's words were broadcast before investigation, before council review, and before liability determination. He said, "A civilization that converts emergency action into moral confession without legal process risks disorder. It encourages public feeling to outrun fact. It pressures harm parties. It destabilizes negotiated settlement." Several delegations signaled approval. Soren turned toward Jonah. "Envoy Mercer, do you deny that you authorized the breach of the Vault of Names?" "No," Jonah said. "Do you deny that your public apology framed that action as harm?" "No." "Do you deny that the Auren representative Mara Vin publicly rejected your apology?" "No." Soren's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then on what basis should this council treat humanity's behavior as stable emergency leadership rather than uncontrolled moral performance?" The question was clean. It was also a room with no windows. Jonah stood. "Because stable leadership is not the refusal to name harm," he said. "It is the ability to act under pressure, save who can be saved, and still record the cost honestly." Soren gestured toward the evidence screen. "You may present your operational defense. I will present the whole record." The first image Jonah displayed was not the broken vault. It was the lower district pressure map from the hour before the breach. Red zones marked failing air. Blue dots marked living signals. The number beside them was too large for the room to ignore. At the time of decision, millions of Auren civilians were trapped beneath the western districts, Jonah said. Council relief was still in transit. Local routes had collapsed. Earth teams identified one viable corridor. It passed through the lower west wall of the Vault of Names. He let the map stay long enough for listeners to understand the clock. Then he changed the image. The vault appeared, whole before the breach. Its long stone bands glowed under archive lights. Auren keepers stood beside them. This was not an ordinary wall, Jonas said. It was an archive of ancestry, exile, survival, and identity. Earth knew it was culturally significant. We did not understand the full depth of that significance before the decision. That failure matters. Another image appeared. The breach. The evacuation. Children carried out under heat blankets. Auren medics and human crews working side by side. The broken name stones laid out on tables. The breach saved lives, Jonas said. The breach destroyed part of a sacred record. Both statements are true. Earth will not ask this council to choose one truth and erase the other. A murmur moved through the lower circles. Soren raised one hand. The council is not asking Earth to erase operational facts. It is asking Earth to respect the order by which facts become legal responsibility. No, Jonas said. The council is asking Earth to call moral harm a structural loss until the powerful are comfortable naming it. The chamber stirred more sharply. Soren's expression did not change. You were offered corrective language. You refused. Yes. Why? Because it was false. Counselor Verisol leaned forward from the founding block tier. She was older than Soren and far more openly dangerous. Her species had helped design the first council charter. Her voice carried the polished patience of someone used to being obeyed after speaking softly. Envoy Mercer, Vera said, "You speak as though truth were simple. It is not. A civilization as young as Earth may mistake emotional clarity for moral wisdom. The council was built to prevent that mistake from becoming law." Jonah turned toward her. Was the council built to prevent mistakes? Counselor, or to prevent admissions? The room tightened. Vera smiled a little. A dramatic distinction, but not a useful one. If every voluntary expression of guilt carried procedural force, half the historical settlements in this chamber could be reopened. Borders would destabilize. Reparations would multiply. Old conflicts would return with new language. Is that what Earth wants? Lena did not move, but Jonah felt the importance of the moment. Vera had said too much because she believed the upper tiers would hear prudence while the lower tiers heard threat. Procedural force sounded abstract. In that room, it meant something simple. It meant an apology could carry enough weight to make the council open records, hear victims, and require repair. Jonah looked around the chamber. Delegations from small worlds were very still. "Thank you," he said. Vera's smile faded. "For what?" "For naming the fear." Soren struck the floor once with the adjudicator's staff. "The envoy will address the question." "I'm addressing it," Jonas said. This hearing was never only about Earth. If it were, the council could have reviewed our rescue choices, assigned responsibility, and order restoration. Instead, it declared the apology worthless before the harmed party could define what it meant to them. It edited Auren grief into technical loss. It froze restoration funds while claiming to protect the wounded. And now Counselor Sol has stated the concern plainly. If apology has meaning, old records may speak again. The lower galleries erupted in layered sound. Soren called for order. Mara Vin watched from the Auren table. Her face was pale. Jonah could not tell whether his words had helped or injured her people further. He had promised not to use them. He had to keep that promise now. Earth does not claim ownership over the histories harmed by this council. Jonah continued when the room settled. We will not release sealed suffering like a weapon to save our status. But we will not let the council use our apology as proof that humanity is unfit to serve. Soren's voice grew colder. Then you maintain the apology? Yes. Even if it costs Earth emergency authority? Jonah thought of the lower district, the clock, the map, the vault, the children carried out. The name stones on tables. Yes, he said, because if Earth must learn to hide harm in order to keep authority, then the authority is already corrupting us. For the first time, Soren looked satisfied. He had what he needed. A man choosing principle over access could be framed as reckless. Before Soren could answer, one of the lower-tier delegates requested recognition. It was an old representative from the moon community of Sarit, a place Jonah knew only from shipping disputes. Her voice trembled, but the chamber heard every word. If apology has no legal value, she said, then why did your predecessors ask our grandparents to accept one after the relocation? They told us it proved the council understood. Now you say such words are nothing. Which version should we teach our children? Soren tried to rule the question outside the scope of the hearing. 3 more delegations objected, then 5, then 12. The chamber did not become a riot. It became something more difficult for power to handle. It became attentive. Species who had arrived to watch Earth fall were now waiting to see who else had been trained to accept beautiful words with no teeth. Vera saw the danger and moved to close it. This proceeding cannot become a museum of grievances, she said. Mara answered before Jonah could. Then stop building law out of locked rooms, she said. The sentence landed hard because it came from the harmed party, not Earth. Jonah felt the balance shift another degree. He had not won the room. Mara had changed what winning meant. The council will now hear from the Auren civil representative, Soren said. Moroven. Mara stood slowly. Jonah sat down. He did not look away from her. If she condemned him, he would take it. Mara walked to the witness floor without ceremony. She wore a plain dark wrap, and at her throat hung a small pouch. Jonah recognized it as one of the cloth pouches used for recovered name fragments. Soren spoke gently. Too gently. Representative Van, the council recognizes the suffering of the Auren people. Do you accept Earth envoy Jonah Mercer's apology as restoration for the destruction of the Vault of Names? Mara looked at him. No. A ripple went through the chamber. Soren nodded. Do you forgive Earth for the breach? No. The upper tiers settled, as if the expected ending had arrived. Soren turned toward Jonah. Let the record show the harmed representative rejects the supposed restorative value of the human apology. No, Mara said. Soren paused. You may clarify. I reject your sentence. Not only his apology. The room shifted. Mara faced the full chamber now. Earth broke the Vault of Names, she said. Jonah Mercer gave the order. My brother died before Earth arrived, and some of my family names were lost after Earth did. I have not forgiven him. I do not know if I ever will. She reached into the pouch and took out a broken stone strip. Half a name showed on it. But this council does not get to decide what an apology is worth to the wounded. The words passed through the translators and seemed to land in every circle at once. Soren's hands tightened around the staff. Mara continued. When Earth spoke, it did not give me back the vault. It did not make my people whole. But it did something this council tried to prevent. It called our loss by its true name. Not structural damage. Not collateral adjustment. Not administrative consequence. It called the harm. Vera's soul rose. Representative Van, grief may make any word feel important, but law must remain stable. Mara turned toward her. Law that cannot say what happened is not stable. It is frightened. The lower galleries sounded again. Soren struck the floor twice. Mara did not raise her voice. That made it stronger. You froze the restoration fund and claimed you were protecting us from Earth, she said. But your own staff changed our record to make our wounds smaller. You wanted our anger when it could be used against humanity. You did not want our truth when it could be used against you. Jonah felt Lena go very still beside him. Mara lifted the broken name strip. Earth broke part of our memory to save our living, she said. The council tried to rename that memory so its old law would stay comfortable. I stand here because I will not let either power own our pain. Earth must answer for what it did. But the council will not erase the first honest apology our dead have ever received. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Kellen Vor stood in the Auren section. Slowly, other Auren delegates stood with him. After that, a delegation from a mining moon in the lower tier rose. then a water world protectorate, then a cluster of small civil observers who had never before stood during a council proceeding because no one had cared whether they sat or stood. Soren called for order again, but order had changed shape. The hearing recessed under pressure, but the chamber did not empty. Delegations gathered in tense circles. Private negotiations began in open corners because there were too many cameras to hide them all. Vera's block offered the compromise Lena had predicted. Earth's apology could be recognized as a cultural expression. It would hold no legal trigger, no procedural value, and no link to future restoration claims. In exchange, Earth's emergency authority would remain untouched. Lena brought the offer to Jonah in a side alcove. "They're giving us status," she said. "Not the principle. They're giving us a clean escape." "Yes." "And asking the Auren to stay in the same cage." "Yes." Jonah looked across the chamber. Mara stood with Kellen and several small delegation leaders. She was not smiling. She looked exhausted, but no longer alone. "Then no," Jonah said. Lena exhaled. "I thought so. Do you think Earth will stand behind that?" "Some will. Some will say you risked too much. Some will say the Council offered us a way out, and you chose a lesson." "What will you say?" Lena looked at him for a long moment. "I will say you finally made the hearing about the right thing." When the chamber reconvened, Soren tried to move directly to sanctions. Vera wanted speed. The longer the hearing stayed public, the more the lower tiers found their courage. Jonah asked to speak before the vote. Soren almost refused, but too many delegations signaled objection. Jonah returned to the floor. He did not bring a dramatic file, a secret list, or a final accusation. He brought the original Auren restoration record, the corrected council version, and the transfer order that removed Earth control from the recovery fund. "Earth is not asking this chamber to declare humanity innocent," he said. "We are not innocent of the harm done to the vault. I gave the order. Earth will fund restoration under Auren control. Earth will accept public review of our decision, our timing, our cultural preparation, and our failure to understand the full meaning of what we breached." He let that settle because it mattered. A proud civilization admitting review before enemies could demand it was not weakness. It was the ground he had chosen. "But Earth rejects the charge that apology proves instability," he said. "We reject the idea that a civilization becomes less fit for responsibility when it refuses to hide the damage it caused. We reject the rule that remorse must remain decorative so old power can sleep undisturbed." Soren's mouth tightened. "If the Council believes Earth must be judged," Jonah said, "then judge us by one standard and apply that standard to every member here. Let rescue be measured. Let harm be named. Let restoration be supervised by those harmed. Let no apology be used as a weapon to strip status from the one who offers it. And let no apology be used as a cheap substitute for repair." He turned slightly toward the Auren delegation. "The Auren do not owe Earth forgiveness. No harm people owes forgiveness on schedule. The right not to forgive is part of the truth." Mara lowered her eyes briefly, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. Jonah faced the chamber again. "So, Earth proposes a new article for council procedure. Call it what you wish. We call it the right of acknowledged harm. A voluntary apology made before the harmed party cannot be used as evidence of diplomatic incompetence. It must open a transparent process for truth, restoration, compensation, and the voice of the harmed. It must protect the right of the harmed to reject forgiveness. It must bind the strong as well as the young. Vera seul stud slowly. You would place Earth under that article? Yes. You would invite future claims against your own civilization? If they are true, they should be heard. You speak as if purity were governance." Jonah met her eyes. "No, I speak as if governance without truth becomes management of silence." The vote did not happen immediately. Nothing in the council that mattered happened cleanly. There were procedural objections, tier challenges, recesses, attempted revisions, and 3 proposals designed to remove the binding force from the article while keeping its name. The lower tiers refused them. Mara refused them. Earth refused them. Public pressure kept building outside the chamber. It no longer came only from Earth or Auren Prime. It came from worlds that had never agreed with each other before. Former protectorates, minor trading habitats, border settlements, species whose names larger powers often mispronounced. They did not all trust Earth. Some did not like Earth, but many understood what had been placed before them. If a powerful council could declare every apology worthless, then the wounded would always receive language without leverage. If a young power like Earth could be punished for admitting harm, then every rising civilization would learn to copy the old lie. By the time the final vote opened, Auren looked less like a judge than a man holding a door shut against a flood. The article passed by a margin narrow enough to show how much of the council still feared it. The chamber did not erupt. The reaction was stranger than that. A long breath moved through the lower tiers, as if many species had not known they were holding air in their bodies until the vote released it. The right of acknowledged harm entered council procedure before the session closed. Earth retained emergency authority, but not without review. The Auren Recovery Trust received formal protection. The vault breach would remain in the record as harm, not structural loss. Jonah's apology would not clear Earth of responsibility. It would stand as the first step in a process the Auren controlled. Soren Thal read the result with visible restraint. Verisol said nothing. That was more revealing than any speech she might have given. After the hearing, Jonah did not attend the Earth delegation's private reception. He returned to Auren Prime. The vault of names looked smaller in person than it had in the chamber images. Its broken lower west wall had been stabilized with temporary braces. Auren keepers had begun placing recovered fragments into clear preservation panels. None of it looked whole. Perhaps it never would. Mara found Jonah standing outside the restoration line. "You should be at your victory gathering," she said. It did not feel like a victory that belonged in a gathering. It was a victory for Earth, partly, and a burden for Earth. Yes. She stood beside him, looking at the damaged wall. For a while, neither of them spoke. Workers had installed a simple temporary plaque at the entrance. It had not been written by Earth. The Auren Recovery Board had written it in their own language first, with translations below. Here the vault was breached to save the living. Here memory was harmed. Here responsibility began. Jonah read it twice. "Does it satisfy you?" Mara asked. "No," he said. "It tells the truth." That is not the same as satisfaction. Mara almost smiled, but not quite. Good. Satisfaction would be too easy. Kellen Vore approached with a small preservation case. Inside lay the broken half-name Mara had held in the chamber. "We found the other half," Kellen said. Mara turned sharply. The old keeper opened the case. A second piece rested beside the first. The join was imperfect. A burned line still crossed the middle, but the name could be read again. Mara touched the case with 2 fingers. Jonah looked away, giving her privacy. Kellen noticed. "Do not look away entirely, human," Kellen said. "You helped break it. You may also witness that not all broken things vanish." Jonah nodded. He deserved neither comfort nor exile from the sight. He stood where he was. Mara's voice was low. "This does not forgive you. I know. It does not make us friends. I know that too." She looked at him then. "But when the council tried to speak for our wound, you did not let them use us. You stopped them, because you left us room to do it." That was the closest thing to thanks she offered. Jonah accepted it as more than he had any right to expect. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy argued about the new article with the fury of societies forced to learn a new word for old pain. Powerful blocs warned that the right of acknowledged harm would flood the council with historical claims. Smaller worlds answered that truth delayed was not disorder. It was debt. Earth argued with itself too. Some praised Jonah Mercer as the man who proved humanity's moral strength. Others accused him of risking Earth's influence for alien approval. Some families of Earth rescue crews asked why their loved ones were being judged after saving millions. Auren survivors answered with images of the vault and said rescue did not erase damage. Jonah did not try to settle every argument. He gave testimony for the Earth Review. He answered Auren questions. He approved the release of every rescue record, including the minutes before his order. He visited no monument with cameras. He accepted no award tied to the operation. The review found that the breach had been operationally justified. It also found that Earth crisis teams had failed to include enough cultural authority in emergency maps for heritage zones. New protocols were written. Not beautiful ones. Practical ones. Slower briefings. Local memory officers. Protected language rules. Relief corridors marked not only by structural risk, but by social meaning. Jonah signed those too. Months later, the Galaxy Council received its first petition under the right of acknowledged harm. It came from a moon community displaced 2 centuries earlier by a founding block security project. Then came another from a water species whose river archives had been sealed under quarantine law. Then another from a trade habitat whose children had been registered under the wrong protectorate identity for 3 generations. The council did not collapse. It complained. It delayed. It formed committees. It tried to narrow definitions. But it had to listen in public now, and that changed the sound of power. Auren Prime changed more slowly. The vault remained wounded. Some names were recovered. Some were not. The Auren Recovery Trust used Earth funds to rebuild housing first, then air systems, then the archive supports. No Earth emblem appeared on the work. That had been part of the agreement. On the first anniversary of the breach, Jonah returned by invitation of the Recovery Board, not the Auren government and not the council. He stood at the back of the ceremony among workers, keepers, families, and a few quiet human rescue crew members. Mara spoke near the repaired entrance. Her voice carried without strain. A year ago, she said, we were told to choose one story. We were told Earth saved us, so we should swallow our grief. We were told Earth harmed us, so we should deny the lives saved. We were told the council would decide what the apology meant. We refused all 3. Jonah listened with his hands folded in front of him. The living came out through a wound, Mara said. The dead remained inside it. We will carry both. She looked once toward Jonah. Not long, not warmly, but openly. The apology did not heal us, she said. It gave us a place to begin demanding truth. That is not enough, but it is not nothing. After the ceremony, Jonah walked alone along the ridge above Vale Tehran. The city below had regained some of its voice. Transit wells hummed again. Pressure gardens glowed beneath repaired glass. The wind moved through the red mineral towers and rang softly, not like celebration, but like something alive testing its own breath. Lena called from Earth orbit. Her face appeared on his wrist screen. The council review of the second petition opened today, she said. Verisol's block tried to dismiss it. They failed. Good. Soren Thal has proposed new limits on emotional testimony. Jonah almost laughed. Of course he has. This is going to be a long fight. Most honest things are. Lena studied him through the small screen. Do you regret the apology? Jonah looked back at the vault. He thought of the blue dots on the map, the wall cracking, Mara lifting the broken name before the council, Kellen saying not all broken things vanish, the vote passing by a margin too narrow to call the galaxy brave, but wide enough to make it move. No, he said. I regret what made it necessary. Lena nodded. That is probably the only answer that still sounds like you. The call ended. Jonah stayed on the ridge until the rescue lights came on across the basin. They were no longer emergency lamps. They were work lights now, placed along scaffolds, archive tables, and new air columns built by Auren hands with Earth materials and no Earth banners. He had once believed that strength in a crisis meant choosing quickly and carrying the result. He still believed that. But Auren Prime had taught him the part Earth had almost missed. Carrying the result did not mean asking others to stop feeling its weight. In the records of the Galaxy Council, the case would be filed under procedure, emergency authority, and restoration law. In Earth histories, it would be called a turning point for humanity's place among the stars. In Auren memory, it would remain something sharper and less comfortable. The day the living were saved through the house of the dead. The day Earth broke the vault. The day Earth refused to rename the breaking. Jonah did not need those histories to agree. For once, the record was large enough to hold them all. The council had thought an apology was the sound of a civilization kneeling. Earth proved it could be the sound of a civilization strong enough to stand in the truth, even when the truth did not make it clean. Humanity was not remembered because it had never caused harm. Humanity was remembered because when harm stood in the open, it did not hide behind a cleaner word. Maybe that is what real strength looks like. Not the strength to avoid blame, and not the strength to win every argument, but the strength to carry the truth when the truth is heavy. If this story stayed with you, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who enjoys meaningful science fiction, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your support helps this channel keep growing, and it means more than you know. Thank you for listening. I hope this story gave you something to think about, something to feel, and maybe something to remember. Until the next journey, take care.